So today I'm going to show you how you can make up a batch of supplements that are ground up. In other words, they're powdered, which makes it a lot easier to give to a small child or a pet, for example. I'm going to begin by showing you the materials that you might need. I have here an assortment of small measuring spoons. These are going to be necessary. Some containers, just a little glass bowl, a plastic container with a lid for storing what you've made, and just another spare container in case I need to, pour something or just store some of the supplements for a little while. This is an important item if you do not have a grinder. The grinder is the easy way to go. This is my trusted and beat up, it keeps on ticking, coffee grinder. It's by the company Procter Silex. I'm sure there are various brands, but I've seen this one many places, so I know it's readily available, and I got this at the grocery store. Okay, so grinder, mortar and pestle, in case you're not familiar with that. It's mortar, M-O-R-T-A-R, mortar, and pestle, P-E-S-T-L-E. Has a grinder that you can grind up the tablets with. Okay. Other than that, you need your supplements, obviously, and you need to know your recipe, essentially. So I'm gonna just talk you through the steps, and then I'm gonna actually do this for my cat. That's how I give supplements to my cat. I make up a large batch at one time, and then I don't have to mess around with it for a long time. First step is select your time frame. Okay, obviously you have your person in mind. Let's say your person is your cat. Okay, here's my cat's supplements. I hope you can see those. Oops, let's see. I'm going to read what it says here. It says Dozer, that's my cat's name. Stress pack, 1/4, 0, 1/4. So this means a quarter at breakfast, nothing in the middle of the day, and a quarter at dinner or supper. And then, of course, zinc is the same, paramin is the same, taurine is the same. Okay, so select your person, make sure you have your recipe. Select your time frame. Are you going to do one whole day, one whole meal, several meals or days? You might actually think that this seems like, okay, that's a no-brainer step, but let's take this particular young man. His supplements are, I'm going to show you. His supplements are, let's see, is that clear? SBF, and it says 1/2, and then 0 and 1/2. Limcomin, 1/2, and then 0, and then a whole. TMG, 1, and then none. Paramin, 1, none, and then 1/2. The fish oil, which obviously we don't powder that anyway, but that's 1 in the morning. The GB3 is 1/2 in the morning and 1/2 at dinner. Kelp is 1/2 in the morning and then 1/2 at dinner. Vitamin D is just 1 per week. Okay, so obviously we're really going to leave out the fish oil and the vitamin D. The vitamin D actually could be put in there because it's 1 capsule per week if you were going to do a full week worth, and that's not an unreasonable thing to do. But here's my point about selecting your time frame and knowing what you're selecting and doing it deliberately. This child is supposed to take 1/2 of an SBF in the morning and 1/2 of a Limcomin in the morning, but at night they're supposed to have 1/2 of an SBF and a whole Limcomin. So you probably could fudge on things if you really wanted to, and you could basically consider this as just one batch for one day, okay? And then you would end up with one homogeneous powder, and you would get half of that powder in the morning and half of that powder in the evening. And so this, the way it's written, wouldn't occur exactly the way it's written, because the whole amount of limcomin would really be getting spread out between the two meals instead of having double the quantity occurring with the evening meal. Now, with nutritional balancing, things like that are actually kind of important often. Not always, but often. So it's probably wise to get an opinion from, you know, your practitioner if you're not sure if it's okay to just kind of homogenize everything. So the approach I'll take when I do one of these sets is that it matters, and we're going to keep the morning group separate from the evening group, because that is the most conservative, strictly, you know, correct way to do it. Okay. But as you can see for my cat, this is a nice example because it's so simple, because it's just a quarter of each item anyway, and then the same supplements in the morning as in the evening. Okay, so this is a great example. Let's start with Dozer when we do our very first batch. Okay, so you're going to select your time frame, whether you're going to do a whole day, just one meal, several meals or days. I would suggest that the very first time you do this, you perhaps do one meal for, you know, for the day, or even just one meal. I kind of misspoke there. So what I meant to say is, so you select your time frame. So I could do just one meal, period. Okay, but then I could also do a week's worth of breakfast, for example, right? If I wanted to do 7 days or 5 days, pick a number that makes sense. For example, if we're working on the cat, obviously if I did 4 servings or 4, you know, meals at a time, that would be simple, because the amount they're supposed to get is a quarter. So if I do one whole tablet of stress pack, then that should be one day and then another day worth of supplements for that cat. Okay? Whereas with this young man, okay, if we're doing just breakfast, so we're just going straight down here, SPF is a half, limcomin is a half. Okay, most of these are halves. It would be quite simple if we simply did a multiple of a half, like 1 whole or 1.5 or 2 or 2.5, etc. I think going by maybe a full week, or close to a week, like 6 days might be nice. So if we were going to do six times, six breakfasts, right, we would then need 3 SPFs. Okay, we would need 3 limcomin, because we're going to just take this and multiply it by 6. Okay, and so on down the list. Okay, so select your time frame, think it through, right? Okay, make sure it's making sense, write it down, make a chart if you need to. Okay, put together in one pile all the supplements for your chosen time frame. Okay, so for my cat, all right, for my cat, Dozer, we have stress pack a quarter. Okay, so here's a stress pack, right? I'm gonna do a 4 times batch. Okay, so it's gonna end up lasting for 2 days. So a whole stress pack, a whole zinc, a whole Paramin, and the taurine. I left the taurine separate because it's going to be a little different, because the taurine is it's a capsule. Okay, so with the capsule, obviously you're just going to pull the capsule apart and you're going to pour it in. So let's just say I'm doing it the mortar and pestle way for the cat. So I'm going to take my mortar and pestle, I'm going to put the supplements in, and grind them up. Once you get them kind of smashed up a little bit, then you can start going round and round in a circle, which is a little more efficient for grinding. So there it is. It's all ground up. And what I will do with the taurine is I'm just going to open the capsule. Most capsules are pretty easy to open. Every now and again you'll struggle a little, but I haven't really found any that gave me much trouble. So open the capsule, throw it in there, and now you can either mix with your mortar and pestle until it's fully mixed, or you can put it in a container. I kind of like putting it in a container that I can shake. Taking one of your spoons to kind of pull it out of there might be very helpful so you don't spill it. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting the whole business into the plastic containers. So there, it's in there. Okay, so we've done this. We've put them all together in a pile. We've ground up the tablets, removed any powders from the capsule, and put it all together in one container. Now we're gonna, so the next thing we're gonna do, because here we go, well that's four servings basically for my cat, right? But how much do I give him per serving? Obviously we're gonna have to measure how much powder we have here, right? Determine the quantity of powder so that you know the amount of powder that equals 1 day, 1 meal, or several days of supplements. You know, break it down into a usable amount so that you're giving the correct amount. So for the cat, because we did 4 times, we're gonna figure out what the total is here, and then we're gonna know that a quarter of that is 1 serving. So after shaking it up, basically what I do, kind of based on the amount of powder. I mean, you might want to start with a larger measuring spoon. This is 1/4 of a teaspoon. So we could do it by 1/4 or by 1/8, depending on how much powder you've got and how many days you're looking at. You know, choose an appropriate amount, appropriate size. So this is 1/4 of a teaspoon. So I'm measuring 1. Gotta have something to dump it into just to measure it. 2, okay. 3. Now I'm getting down to the end. This is, okay, 4. So I have a 4th scoop, with each scoop being 1/4 teaspoon. And now I have a little bit left. So it's not a whole additional 1/4 teaspoon. It's maybe, it's not even 1/8 of a teaspoon. So it's a very small amount. So roughly, what we know now is that 1/4 teaspoon plus a little bit more is equal to one dose, okay? Because we know that we did 4 doses when we started. So essentially what I would say, and what I do with my cat, is I say, well, it's 1/4 teaspoon rounded is the amount of the powder that he should get per meal, okay? So that's it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Okay, you're going to divide the number of days or the number of meals to find the correct quantity to give. We're going to work through this one more time with a different recipe. That we'll do that young man's recipe because his is a little bit more complicated than the cat's. But literally for a pet, I mean, that's how easy it is. And I would go nuts if I had to every single morning, you know, get get the correct amount of pills out and then chop them into quarters and then grind them up and put them in his food, that would be way too much work. So doing it like this is great. I can do a lot of the time for my cat, I do more like about 8 days at a time or so. 8 days, even longer sometimes.